Today we're going to be learning Yevamot daf Kuf Zayin. Today's daf is sponsored by Suri Stern in honor of her son Yosef Yeshaya's marriage yesterday to Rivka Cohen. May they be zochet to build a bayit ne'eman b'Yisrael, a binyan adei ad. Mazal tov. Okay, we're going to start from our new chapter, which we've been talking a lot here and there throughout the Masechet about miyun, about when a woman refuses. Okay, I'll just give a little bit of a background. We all know how difficult it is, particularly for a woman to get out of marriage. She needs a get. She needs the husband to give her the get, has to be willing, he has to give it willingly. Rabbeinu Gershom came in, the woman actually does not need to be a part of get other than it has to be received by her. It could even be given into her property. Takanat Rabbeinu Gershom in the 11th century changed all that. He said, no, the woman also has to agree to the get. You can't give a get against her will, which is why the issue for men and women are different in terms of if the woman refuses to receive the get, there's a way around it, which is called a heter mea rabbanim, a heter by 100 rabbis. If they can get 100 rabbis to agree that this woman really should be giving the get, then we can undo the takanav Rabbeinu Gershom. That's a little easier because it's just a takanav Rabbeinu Gershom rather than Torah law, which is more hard to get around, which is that the get has to be given by his will. So that's why when it comes to the man, we have all sorts of other things like sanctions and all that. We saw that just the other day about getting him to say, Rotseani, I want to do it. That's about get. And then you see again that it's very hard for the woman to get out of marriage. This situation that we're discussing here, though, is a very easy way for the woman to get out of marriage. And we'll even see easier at the very end of today's stuff. But you don't think this is easy enough. If you have a woman who's only married on a rabbinic level, okay, or betrothed. We'll talk about, is it only betrothal? Could it also be marriage? In a case, and we've discussed this many times, where the mother and the brother marry her off, if the father's still around, which either means he's alive or he's maybe alive, or let's say the opposite. If he's either not alive or he's not really in the picture, he's not functioning as her father, then we can bring in the mother and the brother and they can work in his stead. But their level of being able to betroth the daughter is not as strong as the father himself. The father himself takes care of the betrothal, then it's a valid betrothal for all intents and purposes, and you can't do this. But if it's only a rabbinic betrothal because the mother or the brother did it, then the woman is allowed to do mi'un, which is basically she says, I don't want to be married to you anymore, and she walks right out the door, and that's it. She doesn't need anything more. And she only has, though, a certain window to do this until the age of 12 and a half. Once she's 12 and a half and has two simanim already, right, two pubic hairs, she already can't do it, okay? But she has this window where she can do it and say, I don't want to be married. So we're now going to have five issues related to miyun that we have a machloka between Beit Shamai and Beit Hillel. Again, this is going to be a little strange because the next Mishna we're going to end with today, really, you would have expected to be the first Mishna here because it's a little more background. This is already more the details, assuming you know you can do it. Next Mishna is going to discuss, can you actually do this? Can she actually get married at such a young age, etc., which I would have put again first. Again, our way of thinking is not always exactly the same as people who put together the Mishna, and for whatever reason, they organize things a little bit differently. Beit Shamai omrim, ein memanim ela arusot. So it's 5 machlokot between Beit Shamai and Beit Hillel about miyun. First one, according to Beit Shamai, only if you're betrothed. Once you get married, there's no option for miyun anymore, even if you're still under 12 and a half. Beit Hillel omrim arusot u'nisuot. Beit Hillel says, engaged, married, it doesn't matter. Beit Shamai omrim bibal v'lo b'yabam. This is something we saw a lot, and the Gemara is going to be a repeat of things we saw. It's always nice at the end of the Masechet, you get a bunch of things we've already seen. You can do miyun, but I have to admit that this was a complicated section. I'm not sure you'll remember it. So Beit Shammai says you can do miyun to the husband, but you can't do miyun to a yabam. If your husband died without children, you don't have children, and you're still under the age of 12 and a half, and your brother and your mother married you off, you can't do miyun anymore. Beit Hillel omrim bebal u'biyabam. You can do miyun to the husband. You can also do miyun to the yabam. What exactly it means, and there's going to be a whole discussion of when you do miyun to the yabam, are you undoing the first marriage? Are you undoing only if you did ma'amar with him? What exactly can you undo according to Beit Hillel is going to be a big machlok. Beit Shamai omrim b'fanav. This is a very interesting one. Beit Shamai said you have to be in his presence. You can't do miyun if he's not in the room. Beit Hillel omrim b'fanav v'shelo b'fanav. This you can really understand. Imagine this minor girl is married to a man who's probably older than her by a bunch of years. And it's very hard to, in front of his face, say, I do not want to be married to you. You can imagine the emotional difficulty this woman is going to have. So according to the Mishna, according to Beit Hillel, she can just say it separately. She could just say it in front of, we'll see exactly who she has to say it in front of, but he doesn't have to be in the room, because that would, I would say if there were X percentage of women, let's say, there were 30 women who wanted to do miyun, I would say at least half of them wouldn't do it if they had to do it in front of the husband. It would definitely be a big deterrent. Beit Shamai omrim, bebeitin, has to be done in a court. Beit Hillel omrim, bebeitin v'shalom bebeitin, it can be done in a court, it can be done not in a court. What we mean by court is going to be a good question. Does this mean it needs to be done in front of 3 people? Does this mean it needs to be done in an actual courthouse? Does it mean, what exactly does it mean? We'll see in the Gemara. Amru lahem Beit Shamai leBeit Hillel. Mima'enet v'hi ktana. Did I count wrong? 1 second. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 5. Okay, 5 machlokot. This is the last one. Mima'enet v'hi ktana. She can be mima'en as long as, what's the only criteria? That she be young. Afilu arba'a v'chamisha. Did I skip? Right. Beit Hillel is saying this. Afilu arba'a v'chamisha pamim. Here the order is switched. Now instead of saying Beit Shammai says this, Beit Hillel says that, we're getting Beit Hillel speaks to Beit Shammai and says a woman can do miyum a number of times. Let's say, how would that happen? Well, she's married off by her mother and brother, and she does miyum. Then they marry her off to somebody else. She does miyum. They marry her off to somebody else. As long as she's still under the age of 12 and a half, she could do miyun 4 or 5 times. 4 or 5 is one of those favorite numbers of the Mishnah. It's trying to say, right, 3 is like a big number, and anything over 3 is 4 or 5. Okay, it's just a way of speaking. Sometimes the Gemara asks, why'd you say 4 or 5? If 5, then you don't need to say 4. But it's really just a manner of speaking. Remember in Masechet Shabbat, for example, Perek Mefanim Arbo Chamesh Kupot, like how many things can you move out of your storage house on Shabbat? If you need the space for a Beit Midrash or something, or for eating your meal. So there also it said Arbo Chamesh. So here also, you could do it 4 or 5 times. Amru and Beit Shamai, Ein B'nai Yisrael Hefker. That's like making women Hefker, okay? Like ownerless. In other words, that's ridiculous. The woman can't just keep, she's going to end up being married to so many people, and that means possibly they're all having relations with her. Like that's really not an appropriate thing. Once she does miyun once, she does miyun once, she has to wait till she gets of age, and then she can refuse and then get married. Now, this is a little bit strange. What do you mean? She already refused. What's she refusing? We don't really understand this. The Gemara is going to give 2 explanations when we get to the very last section on this Mishna. Before we go on, I just want to talk about women getting married at a young age, or girls getting married at a young age. And I know to us, it seems like this is insane. And why are girls getting married so young? And the truth is, this is why I also would have started with the next Mishnah. We will see different opinions in the Mishnah that women really shouldn't necessarily be getting married too young. Okay, what the cutoff is a good question, and it comes up in the next Mishnah. On the other hand, you have to understand the society they lived in. And the women getting married young was a positive thing. Okay, it was a way to protect them, because society out there, once a woman is designated to a particular man, she's already forbidden to everybody else, and people treat her in that way. Like people who might take advantage of her. It's kind of funny, right? The people who might take advantage somewhat keep halacha, though, even though, right? What it means exactly to keep halacha, but once she's a married woman, they will treat her differently, and it's a way to protect her from either being raped or being taken advantage of by another man, being seduced, being anything. It's a financial thing. She's now got financial security, right? What parent doesn't worry, I hope all my kids get married, right? Many parents worry that their kids get married. This was a way to know your daughter's set. She's already married. She's already got somebody, okay? And, maybe joke about, way to resolve the shidduch crisis. Let's all marry our daughters off young, right? Obviously, we're not doing that. But in their society, you could see why they wanted to do that, okay? So, we all kind of cringe when we think about it, but really, it was protection for the woman, financial security, okay, status. A married woman has a better status, both protecting her from men who might, try to take advantage of her. But not only that, it's a status thing. You're already married. That puts you in a better place in society. So, and we're even going to see in the Gemara today that for the man, it also put him in a better place in society when he had a wife. So, I'm sure many people have come across this. Sometimes, it's harder to get a job if you're not married. This is actually an interesting statistic. My daughter was doing a project on data collection, and it makes a lot of sense that women who were married, actually, it was harder to get jobs. But for men who were married, it was easier to get jobs. They did some research that the statistics show a man who's married is looked at more respectfully. A woman who's married is not, because, I guess there's worry. She has children, responsibilities, and isn't going to show up at work. So the statistics nowadays show that. So you can see even, right, that now also it's a status thing to be married for a man. Okay, again, for a woman, maybe not as good. In those days, they weren't really looking to get into the job market. So that wasn't an issue. So I want you to read these with those eyes, and remember, with the glasses of living in the time of the Gemara, because you can't compare this kind of thing to our society nowadays where this just wouldn't go. Starting now with we're going to go machloket by machloket, one at a time. And the first one's going to be the most elaborate. We're going to try to figure out the first two even, but we're going to try to figure out first why Beit Shammai says, and we're going to give 4 different answers, and then we'll have to explain each time what Beit Hillel holds, why he holds that way, why he's not worried about Beit Shammai's opinion, why Beit Shammai doesn't allow miyun from marriage, only from betrothal, engagement. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. First answer. My time in Beit Shammai. Lefisha ain't t'nai b'nisuin. The first thing you have to understand, according to this, not everybody always holds this way, but we've seen before that people didn't generally make conditions, stipulations for marriage. Here he seems to be saying you can't make a stipulation for marriage, okay? Meaning, many people did kiddushin al t'nai. I'll betroth you under the condition that this will happen. You'll give me money. I'll give you money. All sorts of things could happen. And then, if it doesn't happen, the kiddushin is not kiddushin. But you can't do that with weddings. Why? Well, mainly, again, there's a debate whether you really can or can't, or people just don't. But here it seems to be saying you can't. Why can't you? Because you're actually, once you get married, you're going to have relations, and then that would be really inappropriate to undo it after you've already got married. Now, what's the connection here? Well, he says, if we're going to allow miyun from marriage, people will look at the situation, not understand. This is a clear maris ayin, right? What it looks like. People will see that she was married and she's no longer married. What will they think? It must be there was a condition to the marriage and the condition wasn't fulfilled. And therefore they'll think that there could be conditions on marriage. So it's only because of what it looks like, and it might cause people to think that you could do a t'nai b'nisuin. So ate l'meimar yesh t'nai b'nisuin, and therefore we don't allow it. Okay, we don't allow it because we're worried people will see the situation, misunderstand, think that there was a condition made in the marriage, and the marriage, the condition was never fulfilled, so the marriage became undone for that reason, and not because of miyun. So now they say, okay, well, that's when there's nisuin. But what if there's just chuppah without nisuin? There's no t'nai in the nisuin, but maybe there could be t'nai in the stage before the chuppah. And why then by chuppah do we say, once there's chuppah, you can't do miyun anymore? Nichnisa lechuppah v'lo nivala, right? We assume this whole thing is in t'nai b'nisuin is because of having relations. But what if it's before? So they say, lefisha ain't t'nai b'chuppah. Well, also chuppah you can't do under condition because chuppah is the precursor to having relations. So it's all connected. So that's not really a question. Masar ha'av l'shluchei habal. What if the father just gave her over to the messengers of the husband to go get married where you didn't even have chuppah yet? So why at that point can she not do miyun anymore? They say, right, for whatever reason, they assume it's obvious that you can't do miyun at that point. Lo plug rabbanan. Okay, they just didn't distinguish. This is, right, you're on the way to the wedding. You've already left your father's reshut. You're in the reshut of your husband already, even though you haven't gone through the marriage ceremony. That's enough to say she can't do miyun anymore because we're just going to view that as part of the marriage ceremony. Okay, really, there's not such concern, but you really could, but they just make it clear cut. They have to draw the line somewhere. Beit Hillel, why are they not worried that people will think yesh t'nai b'nisuin and they allow miyun from marriage? So he says, everyone's going to know it was nisuin of a minor. Everyone's going to know that it's only a rabbinic law. And therefore, everyone's going to understand that there was miyun here. They're not going to start thinking, oh, maybe there was a t'nai in the nisuin. Okay, this is, again, always a debate. What people will think, what do people know, what do people not know? We don't really know what people know or don't know, right? So anyway, this is not an issue according to him. Next. That was answer number 1. Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef, the Amrei Travayu, both of them held that the reason, Tama de Beit Shamai, a person doesn't want to make a sexual encounter into a sexual encounter of znut. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that if a man knows that the woman could just walk out of the marriage and refuse to stay married to him, which will retroactively invalidate the marriage from the beginning, it will be as if they were never married, he's not going to want to go marry her then until she's of age, because he doesn't want to make his be'ilah znut. He doesn't want to have relations with her, have her refuse. Retroactively, it will turn out that they never should have been married in the first place. So therefore, he won't marry her. Now, again, it's hard for us to understand, but they want to incentivize the marriage to take place. Maybe they were worried if they didn't go through with the marriage, he would undo the kiddushin. In other words, because again, it's not like we have an interest in making sure this 12-year-old has sexual relations with her husband, which is what the marriage permits. But I think it's more that they want him to finish the process so that it's for sure a done deal and he doesn't try to undo the kiddushin. So we want to incentivize him to go through with the marriage. And if he knows that miyun is lingering above, he's not going to do it because maybe it'll turn the be'ilah into a be'ilah znut. And people don't like that. So why can't we do miyun after chuppah? There's no concern of having sexual relations there. You don't have that until after. So no, he also doesn't want his chuppah to be chuppah v'isur, because again, chuppah goes together. Chuppah is permitting him to have sexual relations with her. So already at that point, he's not going to want to go into it knowing that she could undo it. What about, as we asked before, if he already gave them over to the shluchim, the messengers of the husband, but she's not even a chuppah yet, why can't you do miyun at that point? Lo plug Rabbanan. Again, they drew the line. That's where they drew the line. Beit Hillel, why aren't they worried about this? Now, what's the issue? We thought the issue was that he himself isn't going to want to get married because he doesn't want it to be that his be'ilah was be'ilah znut. According to Beit Hillel, it's more that he doesn't want people to say that. He doesn't want people to say, oh, look, this guy got married to her just so he could have relations with her when he knew in the end it was all going to be undone and it was just a be'ilah znut. He doesn't want people to say that. So comes Beit Hillel and he says, we're not really worried people are going to say that in this situation. Why? He did a bunch of things. He did kiddushin, which is usually he gave her money, some value. He gave her a ketubah, because marriage doesn't happen without a ketubah, which means he promised her all sorts of money. People aren't going to say, oh, look, this guy did it just so we could sleep with her. He committed all these things. They won't not take him seriously, basically, and think that he caused this just so he could have sex with this woman. So because of that, we're not worried that he's worried that people will say, and then he won't get married because of it. No, he'll get married. Worst case, she does miyun. Okay, he won't look so bad. I mean, first of all, it makes him look bad a little bit, but he won't look like he did this all just so he could have relations with her. So he's not worried. Next, third answer. Rav Papa Amal, this is a kind of funny sounding line. Tama de Beit Shamai mishum pere, Tama de Beit Hillel mishum pere. They both think this all has to do with the payroll. What are the payroll? Remember, the woman brings in money to the marriage. The husband, like objects, things that belong to her, let's say a field. The husband can take all the produce from the field while they're married, okay, only from marriage. So that's why this is important. So Beit Shammai says you can't do miyum for marriage because of the payroll. And Beit Hillel says you can do miyum for marriage because of the payroll. What does this mean? So the Gemara is going to explain. Tama de Beit Shammai mishum pere. If you allow her to do miyun and refuse the marriage, shamit va'acha lehu minei, to sof lemepak kaima. If he knows that there's miyun looming above him, when he gets married and he now has rights to her all the produce, what's he going to do? He's going to say, come tomorrow, she might just do miyun and walk out. And I have all this money at my disposal right now. So not only am I going to take the fruits off her tree, I'm going to cut the branches off her tree. I'm going to start digging in to the principal, okay, which he's not really supposed to do. But he feels like right now I have it and I want to make money off of it because tomorrow I probably won't. And he'll start cutting into her stuff. So Beit Shammai says, we're not going to allow miyum for marriage because he'll end up taking advantage and ruining all of her property. Beit Hillel, this is a good example where we see you can prove anything in the opposite. Beit Hillel Dafka says, no, it's better for her. Why? Beit Hillel, adarabah, the opposite. Kevan de'amar tima'en, if you know that any day your wife might decide to refuse to stay married to you, what are you going to do? Ishbuche mishabech lehu. there's two approaches you can do, right? One is, let's just get as much as I can now. That's Beit Shamai. This is what you call the pessimistic approach, okay? She might, walk out on me. I better, take what I can. The other approach is to say, wait, she might walk out on me. Well, let me make sure she stays with me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make a lot of money out of her stuff. And I'm going to show her that I care about her stuff. And then what's interesting, remember, she's a minor. She doesn't have so much to say on her own. Savar de ilo, he thinks if I don't do that, iatse la kroveha, her relatives will give her advice, umaf kalamine, and they'll tell her, look, he's destroying your property. You better get out of this marriage. He's just after your money. Or look, you're going to have no life with him because he doesn't even know how to handle your property. So, right, whichever way you look at it, Beit Hillel is going to say it's actually better for her property. If he's worried about me, and it'll actually make him behave better, right? It's almost like, what will it cause you to do? Behave worse or better, right? Do you take the pessimistic approach? There's no way she's going to stay married to me, and I better get what I can now. Or it's likely she'll stay married to me as long as I do the right things, and therefore he'll make her property better. So those are two flip sides to the same idea. Fourth answer. Rava Amar, Hainu Tama de Beit Shamai, she'en adam toreach b'seuda u'mafsida. People don't want to make a big meal and lose their money. So he's not going to want to make a big wedding feast if in the end, she's just going to walk out on him. It'll be a total waste of money. This is like the bilato znut, but more in the financial perspective, right? It'll just be a waste. Ubeit Hillel, chavayu nichalehu, kedei delefuk alayu kala deishu. This is where I told you before. It's a status symbol to be married. So even if they had a big wedding feast, and in the end, she does miu, and a year or two later, he benefited that year or two from having the social status of being a married man. So it's worth it to him to do now, even though in the end, maybe she'll do miu because it already provides him with something just to say, I'm married. And for her, obviously, it's good because that's what the Gemara always talks about it, how good it is for her to be married. I want to go back for one short thing about the seuda. So the sources talk about that. And this is just interesting in light of, right, in traditional, if you go by traditional wedding ceremonies, certainly when I was growing up, I know much of this is broken, and even then it was already broken, but there is tradition that the bride's family often pays for the wedding or pays for the bulk of the wedding or part of the, and here it's clear the groom's family pays for the wedding and the bride's family pays for the engagement party. That's why the engagement is not mentioned here because her family pays for it. So if she does me, and that's their problem. But the grooms seem to have paid for the wedding feast. So it's interesting to see in terms of, things have changed. Again, things, like I said, are changing back, and now it's often more equal. Obviously, it also depends on everybody's situation, who has more means. Anyway, it's just interesting to see in terms of customs that existed in those days. It was the groom's family that paid for the wedding, and presumably it seems like her family paid for the engagement party, because some of the commentaries say, but there was also an engagement party and people spent money on that. Right? It also shows they had engagement parties also. Anyway, it's just interesting to see, get a glimpse into their life, the way they lived in those days. Beit Shamai umrim bebal. Moving on to the next machloket. This is a little bit complicated also. That one wasn't so complicated. That was just 4 different approaches. Now we're going to understand this miyun biyabam or not. Can you do miyun to yabam? Can you not? But really, we're going to focus on Beit Hillel, who says you can do miyun to the yabam. We're going to have 2 approaches to understanding what it means to do miyun to the yabam. Amar Rabbi Oshaya, mima'enet lema'amaro ve'ena mima'enet lezikato. She can't get rid of the zika. When she does miyun to the yabam, it's a good question. What's she doing? Is she saying, I never wanted to be married to the first husband in the first place, and undoes the first marriage, which means there is no chiyuv yibum? According to Rabbi Oshaya, that's not what she does. What she can do is she can say, because she's still underage, and because her obligation to this yabam came through the first husband, which was only a marriage to Rabbanan, she can say to him, if they did ma'amal, which is like a kiddushin for the yabam, which means I'm going to specifically marry you, she can undo the ma'amal through miyun. But she can't undo her marriage to her first husband, according to Rabbi Oshaya. You'll see the second interpretation disagrees with this. Amar of Chisda, my Tana de Rabbi Oshaya, what's his reason? So he says, ma'amal dimida'ata mati'akra. The first explanation, in which we're going to reject, but right now he says, has to do with, did she go into this willingly? Or did this come upon her against her will? Whatever she goes into willingly, she can undo. So she went into ma'amar willingly. That's the whole idea of ma'amar, if you remember. Yibum, having intercourse, can be done against her will. That's why the rabbis instituted Duma Amar first, because then she has to be a willing partner. Ma'amar can't happen without her being a willing partner, because Ma'amar is like Kiddushin. Again, there was a bit of a machloket about that, but we hold by the Ma'amar has to be done willingly, like Kiddushin, where she has to go in willingly. So Ma'amar was done on her with her intent. Therefore, but zika to Ba'al Korcha, why does she have zika to this man? Against her will. Her husband died, automatically she ends up connected to the brother-in-law. She went in willing to use her marriage with her husband, but now she ends up to her brother-in-law, which she was totally, she had no interest necessarily, we don't know, but it was definitely forced upon her. So that she can't uproot through, okay, we're going to assume, according to right now, the reason for Rabbi Oshaya's explanation is, the way he explains Beit Hillel, that you can do it to the yabam, but not to undo the zika, because the zika is not something she can undo because she didn't go into it willingly. So then they say, wait a minute, but bi'ah, if she has intercourse with him, diba'al korcha, potentially it could be against her will. And yet matzi akra, she can undo it. Okay, how she can undo it is a good question. Can she just do miyum? Possibly. She can be mima'enet at that point because she's still underage and it all came from a Rabbanit. And yet it was against her will. It could be theoretically against her will, and yet she can do miyum. So against her will or with her will doesn't seem to be the criteria here. Ela bi'a uma'amal. So instead he explains it a little bit differently. Bi'a uma'amar, what's the common denominator between them? Tehu ka'avid matzi akra. They do it themselves. They decide we're going to have intercourse. They do, to fulfill the mitzvah of yibum, or they decide we're going to do ma'amar to move toward fulfilling the mitzvah of yibum. That she can uproot through miyum. But zika derachmana rame'ala. But the zika is something that comes by Torah law, not something they bring upon themselves. That fell upon them by Torah law. That lo matzi akra, that she can't do miyum. And that's why he thinks the zika can't be gotten rid of by miyum. Ulla amal, Ulla is a much more simple way of understanding it. Mima enet afla zikatel. Why my taima? Nisue kama ka'akra. What is she doing when she does miyum with the yabam? She's basically saying, okay, remember, she has a window of opportunity. Now, because the husband died, she no longer has that window of opportunity. Well, comes Ulla and says she does. Because he died without children, she now her connection to the yabam is because of the first marriage. If she now says, I never wanted to be married to the first husband, she can still uproot them even though he's not alive, because her connection to him is still alive because of zika and because of the Torah law. So because of that, she can basically at this point say, again, assuming she's still of age, right, under 12 and a half and 2 simanim, she can uproot the original marriage, okay? Once she uproots the original marriage, it's as if they were never married. It's as if there's no chiyuv yibum, okay? And she can undo the zika according to Ulla. Eitive Rava, okay, we're having the same structure. We had an answer, an explanation, and then a question on that. And then, right, the first time we reinterpreted the explanation. Here we're just going to bring a question and then answer the question. Eitive Rava says, I have a source that seems to contradict what you're saying. So, Kol she'yechola lema'en v'lo mi'ana. Okay, I just want to respond to a question before I move on. So, Tina, you're asking if she can't do on zika, she can never remarry. Of course, she can remarry. She has to do yibum or chalitza. She can. If she wants to remarry someone else, she'll do chalitza. If she does yibum and she gets divorced, then she can, right, go marry somebody else. It's just she can't do it by miyum. That's the real issue, which is obviously a much easier way of doing it. Right, especially after we just talked about how embarrassing the chalitza ceremony is. It's a difficult ceremony. This is much easier. It's a little embarrassing, but she just has to say, I don't want to be married to you when it's done. So that's the difference. So now here comes the question. It says, and this is also something we learned already, this is the first Mishna. Okay, we have to go way back. First Mishna, remember what we talked about, the 15 arayot. If you fall to yibum to someone who you're forbidden to marry, then you're exempt, and the second wife, your rival wife, is exempt as well. So right now, your second wife, but the second wife of your husband, or the rival wife. So now, if you remember, it said in that Mishnah, this was a less memorable line, Kol she'yechola lema'en v'lo mi'ana, if she was married only on a rabbinic level to him, meaning she had the potential to be mima'en, okay, she could have refused, and she didn't when he was still alive, which means her marriage was only d'Rabbanan, and now she falls to yibum from this d'Rabbanan marriage, a rabbinic marriage only, to someone who's, let's say, her father, okay, an arayot. she theoretically should exempt the tzara, but the tzara is married on a Torah level. So we're at this in between. So what does it say here? Her rival wife, who's married on a Torah level, can't do yibum because on a rabbinic level, she's exempt because it's a rayot for this young minor woman who's married. On the other hand, she's not exempt because on a Torah level, the first woman isn't even married to her husband, right? The arayot woman. So she's in this in-between stage and she has to do chalitza v'lo yibum. What does this have to do with our topic? Well, the Gemara says, Amai, if you're really right, Ulla, that the woman who potentially could still do miyun can just do miyun and uproot the first marriage, well, then we have a much better solution. Instead of doing this in between, well, only do chalitza, don't do yibum, we'd rather come up with a way that we can provide yibum as an option. So how we could do that very simply, according to Ulla. If we basically dissolve the first marriage entirely of this young woman, say, do miyun, your first husband, you were never really married to him, which means that now in the end, your first husband died. He only had one wife, the rival wife. She can now do yibum because she's not related at all to the yabam. That would be a much better solution if you were really right, Ulla. So you must not be right. To which the Gemara answers, Sarat ervashani. No, this is a unique case where it's not really legally. You could do that if you wanted. But the reason why in other words, even if you could do miyun and uproot the first marriage, we still wouldn't allow the tzara of the erva, right? The rival wife of this erva woman who now did miyun and undid her first marriage, we still wouldn't allow her to do yibum, even if she did miyun. Why? And now we're going to go into a different case and just say that these two cases are very similar. In a regular case where this woman is betrothed by her mother or brother to a man, and she does miyun, it's as if she was never married, and she's even permitted to marry his father now. That's how not married they are. That's how much we can undo it. However, yabam, if she does the miyun to the yabam, meaning if she fell to yibum to a yabam, he died before she did miyun. She fell to yibum to his brother, and then she did miyun and got rid of her connection to him. Asura la'aviv. At this point, she can't marry the father, even though theoretically she undid the first marriage. So why not? This shows that when you fall to yibum, something happens there. Alma b'sha'at nefila nir'et kekalato. It becomes more known that she was married to this guy. It's almost right. It's a second stage of being married to him. Not only were you married to him, but because you're married to him, you now fell to yibum to somebody else. It makes you much more look like the father's daughter-in-law because not only were you married to one son, but you ended up falling to yibum to the other son. And that already again, if we talk about what it looks like, it looks much more like you're connected to this family, and therefore we're going to forbid you to marry the father. However, we're going to say the same thing by us. Even if the erva woman, the young woman who could do miyun, does miyun and undoes the first marriage as if she was never married, since she was married to him and fell to yibum on account of him, his rival wife clearly looks to everybody like the tzara of this guy's daughter, right? The yabam who she now falls to. We're not going to ever allow her to do yibum because of the way it looks. Okay, so this has to do with how it looks and not really legally by the letter of the law. Amarav. Now we're going to have a three-way machloket. If she does miyun, what happens? What's her status now with the brothers? Now, again, if she undoes the zika, right, or she undoes, can she marry the other brothers? Can she marry the yabam that she did miyun to? Can she not marry anybody? What happens exactly? So, miana bezeh asura lezeh. If she does miyun to one of the brothers, let's say there's three brothers, she can marry the other two brothers. Okay? No, did I just say it wrong? Asura lezeh, sorry. She can't marry any of the other brothers, okay? If she's miana to some, she can't marry any of the brothers now. All the brothers are forbidden mishum eshet ach. Now, why is this? It's not really, because she really undid the first marriage. So she's not the wife of his brother, but midi dehavia ba'alat get. It's like someone who gets a get from yibum. Remember, we've learned this already a long time ago. If the yabam gives her a get, which we already learned, what do you mean give her a get? They're not married. Get is to undo marriage. But we view if he gives her a get, she's already forbidden. That forbids her to do yibum with any of the brothers. So now miyun, we're going to say, is like that. Okay. It's very different. And the next comment, the next source is going to say why. There's a big difference. Let's just think about it for a minute. Why normally, if you give her a get, you're forbidden to marry her? You can't do yibum anymore because we say it's lo yivneh, right? He rejected her. So now he can no longer build his brother's house. We don't give him the opportunity. You have one chance, you blew it, you can't do it anymore. Here it's a little different because she does the miyun and not him. Okay, but right now we're going to view it as if it's the same. Ba'alat get lav kevan itasrala itasrale lechad ist itasra lehu lekulu. If he gives her a get, not only is she forbidden to him, but lo yivneh applies to all the brothers equally. Remember, we've talked about this before, either because lo yivneh also, or because it reverts back to esharach, right? And then she can't marry any of them. Hachanami lo shna. So we'll say the same thing here. Shmuel says, mi'ana b'zeh muteret lezeh. No. If she does miyun to him, she can't ever marry him, but she can marry the others. Why? And this is exactly what I said before, which is it's not like a ba'alat get. Why? Ba'alat get hu deka'avid ba. The get he initiated, and that's why this isur of lo yivneh ticks in, because the whole lo yivneh is you didn't do it. Now we're not going to let you do it anymore. But in this case, hacha hi ka'avdebe. She's the one who initiated. And what's she really saying when she does miyum? What's she really saying? We kind of thought she's saying, I never really wanted to be married to the first husband in the first place. But what she's really saying, according to Shmuel, is, lo rayana bach, velo tzavina bach. I don't desire you. I don't want you. You is the one I don't want. But bechahu de lo rayana, ha bechavrach rayana. But maybe I do have a desire for your brother. She's only rejecting the yabam. It's a very localized miyun. It's not to all the brothers. So according to Shmuel, she can marry all the other brothers. Rav Asi amar mi'ana bezeh muteret afilu lo. Rav Asi says a radical position, which is if she does miyun to him, not only can she marry the brothers, she can even marry him if she wants. Okay, so why? We're going to have to try to figure out. Lema ki Rabbi Oshaya sfira le damar ena meme'enet lizikato. Maybe he holds like Rabbi Oshaya, who said there's miyun only for ma'amal. She can undo a ma'amar that connected her to him. But she can't undo the zika. Once there's zika, she's still connected to all the yevamim. She can do the mitzvah of yibum with them. So the Gemara says, well, bechad yabam hachinami dematze akra, hacha b'shnei yevamim askim. If it was only one yabam, she could actually undo zika. Okay, meaning we can hold like Rabbi Oshaya. We don't have to hold like Rabbi Oshaya. She can even undo the zika, but she can only undo the zika when there's one yabam. Okay, we'll see there's two ways to undo it, but when there's one yabam, she can say, right, I'm doing miyun to you, which basically you're the only yabam, so basically I'm done with this family. But hacha b'shnei yevamim askina de'ein miyun lechatzi zika. What does this mean? If she's in front of three brothers and she goes to one and says, I don't want to be married to you, she does miyun. That is undoing zika partially because she's getting rid of 1/3 of the zika. There's no such thing as getting rid of 1/3 or 1/2 of the zika. It's a meaningless action. She would have to go to all three and say, I don't want to do me, right? I don't want to be married to you. I don't want to be married to you. I don't want to be married to you. Then she could entirely undo her marriage to the first husband. Because even though she was married to one guy, she now has zika to three. So she has to undo to each of them. If she undoes only one, she's still left with zika. Even according to the one who says miyun can undo the zika. It can only undo it according to Rav Asi. Not everybody agrees with this. We didn't understand it this way before. We understood before that she's actually just undoing the first marriage, saying I never really wanted to be married to the first husband in the first place. But according to Rav Asi, she has to actually get rid of zika for all of them. So in this case, she only got rid of for one, meaning her miyun was ineffective, which is because it's ineffective now, she can marry anyone she wants. She can actually do yibum with them without a problem. So there we had three approaches, whether she's forbidden to all the brothers, she's forbidden only to this brother, or she's actually permitted to all the brothers. Kiata Ravin, Rabbi Yochanan, okay, he said the middle position of Shmuel, Velohu Julo, but they didn't agree with Rabbi Yochanan, or Ravin, who brought this halacha of Rabbi Yochanan. Man lohu Julo, when Ravin came to Bavel and told this thing about Rabbi Yochanan, who didn't agree with him? So Rabbi Rav Amar Rabbi Oshaya, Amar la Rav Asi. Okay, there was a debate about who exactly was the one who disagreed and said, I don't hold this way. Either which way, we already showed all those people don't really agree with that approach. Okay, only Shmuel did. Beit Shamai omrim b'fanav. Moving on to the next machlok. It has to be in front of him, and Beit Hillel said even not in front of him. Tanya, there's a brayta that says, Amrula and Beit Hillel Beit Shamai. Follow Pishon hagamal. Okay, Pishon, the camel driver. It's not a camel. He's the camel driver. Pishon was the camel driver. Mi'ana ishto shelo b'fanav. We'll bring you proof that this happened. Okay, we saw the situation. She did miyun to him. He wasn't there. Amrule Beit Shamai Beit Hillel. Fascinating answer. Pishon hagamal b'midah kfusha madad. He measured things with an inappropriate measurement, meaning he did things inappropriately with her property. Lefichach madidu lo b'midah kfusha. Therefore, they dealt with him in an inappropriate manner, meaning they bent the halacha for him and allowed her to do it not in his presence because he broke the law. Okay, this is fascinating to think. If somebody breaks the law, you can break the law for them. I guess it depends on how strong the law is. Obviously, Beit Shammai must not have been 100% convinced of their answer, but they're basically saying they were able to bend the rules because he bent the rules in a negative way. So then they say, wait a minute, what was the issue? He was obviously taking the proceeds of her stuff and taking maybe more than what he was allowed. So that shows, I told you earlier, payroll can only be when they're married. He only gets payroll when they're married. She must have been married to him. Now, wait a minute. Beit Shammai, we got another problem with this according to your interpretation. Beit Shammai, right? Once she's married, she can't do miyun. So how could you understand this case? This case clearly disproves that as well. To which they answer, fascinatingly, trei kitrei avdube. Because he was so bad, they did two things against the law. They allowed it. She was married, even though normally we wouldn't, and they allowed her to do it not in his presence, even though normally that wouldn't be permitted. Okay, next, Beit Shammai omrim b'fnei beitim, right? It shows how they can bend the law. Very interesting. Beit Shammai says b'fnei beitim, t'nan hatam. So we actually saw this just recently. In Sanhedrin, it says, chalitzava miyunim b'shlosha. You need 3 judges for miyun. Montana, who's the author, it sounds like Beit Shammai, which would be weird that the Stam Mishnah would be Beit Shammai. Amar Rabba Beit Shammai hi, Abai Amar afilu tema Beit Hillel. When they said shelo b'beitim, what they meant is you don't need special judges who know all the laws. But you need 3 people. It could just be random 3 people. Tanya, as it says in a brayta, Beit Shamai omrim b'fnei beitim, Beit Hillel omrim b'fnei beitim v'shelo b'fnei beitim. Okay, that's like our Mishna in the courts or not in the courts. Ve'elu modim shetzarich shlosha. But they both agree you need 3. And then Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon machshirim b'shnayim. They say you could do miyun in front of 2 only. That's a dissenting opinion. And Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Menyumi, Amar Rav Nachman halacha koto azug. We paskin like that part, like that zug. Those 2 people that you really only need 2. This is different from chalitza, where we saw we don't paskin like that zug, and you actually need 3 according to the same person. Beit Shammai omrim tima'en. So now this last line didn't make any sense. Once she does miyun once, then she has to wait till she's older, then she has to do miyun, and then she can go get married. Why does she have to do miyun a second time? She already did miyun the first time, at the beginning. Amar Shmuel, when she gets of age, she has to reaffirm her original miyun. Ulla says, no. What this is saying is there's 2 tracks. She can either go and get engaged again, but not married. She can do miyun, and then she can wait till she becomes of age, and then only get betrothed, meaning she can't get betrothed. Why? Because Beit Shammai says, from betrothal, you can do miyun. So we don't allow her betrothal later because that means she might do miyun. Option 2 is tima'em v'tinaseh la'alta. She can do miyun, and then get immediately married. And that would also preclude her from doing miyun again. We want to just create a situation where she can't do miyun a second time. To which the Gemara says, the language matches because it says tagdil v'tinaseh, meaning tagdil and get engaged, or tinaseh immediately, get married right away. Ela l'shmuel, it should have said tagdil v'tomar mebayale. She has to get older and then say miyun again, and that's not what it says. She needs to do some sort of recitation. Kasha. So that's in fact difficult, the wording according to Shmuel's interpretation. Okay, what we'll do now is just read the next Mishnah, and then we'll start on the Gemara tomorrow. I told you we should have started here. Which kind of tana needs miyun? The mother and the brother marry her off, and that's the first condition, and it has to be with her will. She has to want to do this. Okay, they can't do it against her wishes. It doesn't have validity at all. She doesn't even need miyun in that case. She doesn't even need to say, I don't want to be married to him. She just walks out the door. Rabbi Chanina ben Antuginu Somer. Here we start to get some different opinions. If she's so young that she can't keep, if she gets, let's say, a document from the Kiddushin, and she can't keep it, or she gets a ring and she'll lose the ring, she doesn't even need miyun. That's not considered marriage. She needs to be of a certain age where she has a certain amount of knowledge, ability to do this. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, ein masek tana klum. If she's a minor, it's nothing. Ela kimifuteh. It's like she was seduced by a man and went in willingly. Okay, that's the way we view this. Not like a marriage at all, because you can't marry off a woman when she's a minor. Therefore, by Israel kohen lo tochal b'truma, bat kohen l'Israel tochal b'truma. Okay, therefore, it has no ramifications like a marriage. If she's a bat kohen, she can still eat truma at her father's house. If she's the Israel married to a kohen, it's not like they're married; she can't eat truma. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, and this is a line we will not understand yet. Kol akava shumen aish, any kind of delay or hesitation that comes in that's from the man, ki'ilu hi ishto, it's as if it's his wife. Kol akava she'ena min aish, ki'ilu eina ishto. If it's not from him, then it's as if she's not his wife. We don't really know how to explain this. The Gemara is going to explain this later, so we'll wait till then. Have a great day, everybody. Meet up tomorrow.